Good morning. It's finally Friday, and I'm still watching yesterday's testimony. I think I got through the first couple of witnesses, but I'm going back even one day further than that to talk about this Dan Lawler. He is from the Massachusetts State Police, and he was one of the ones that was assigned to guard Lindsay's room at the hospital. He was supposed to be able to speak to kind of the voices allegation. So, to get you up to speed, Lindsay Clancy is this woman who is on trial. She has killed her children, but is claiming that she is not criminally responsible, right? So she has claimed not guilty by reason of insanity, even though Massachusetts calls it something different. That's basically the premise. Any other place you live, that's how it's going to probably sound in your court system. So technically, it's an affirmative defense. I did it, but, right? I did it in self-defense, or I did it because I was not in my right mind. Okay. Now, there's a whole legal conversation about burden shifting and what that looks like in Massachusetts. I'm not going to go into that. But bottom line is that the prosecution has to prove that she did it and that she was in her right mind. The reason they brought this prosecution in the first place, the reason we are in this trial, is that the prosecution has maintained from the very beginning that she killed all three of her kids, and she did so in a malicious, violent, premeditated way. So she knew full well what she was doing. She planned to do it. She strategized it. She got her husband out of the home for a certain window of time so that she could execute it. She had means, motive, execution. But here's the problem. If you've been following this trial, you haven't seen that, right? They have failed to prove, in my opinion, to the jury, who matters. We don't matter if they haven't proved a test, but they haven't proven to the jury that she had a motive. She had means and she had opportunity, but she didn't have the motive. She was an otherwise loving mother. By all accounts, people thought she was wonderful. She was smart. She was well educated. She liked to exercise. She ate well. There was no other indication that she would snap, except for the fact that she'd been suffering from terrible postpartum and had gone to multiple doctors, multiple healthcare facilities, the emergency room. She'd checked herself into inpatient care. She had tried for 4 months to get help for her escalating mental issues, and she was failed time and time and time again. And I believe misdiagnosed. I've said from the beginning, I personally believe, my opinion, that she was undiagnosed bipolar. And so when they were prescribing her medications, they weren't taking that into consideration, and therefore could have given her something that caused this psychosis, this psychotic break, this snapping that would cause her to kill her children. I believe that she did it. She knows she did it. She's acknowledged she did it. She's suing the medical care professionals for putting her in that situation because they technically made her do it. They put her in a position where she couldn't control herself. And I do believe she needs help. And my hope is this outcome is that she is sent to a mental health facility for a very long time. At the end of the day, there are still 3 children who are no longer on this earth. I think her punishment should be maybe the next 20 years in a mental hospital. That's what I think. So let's get back to this Dan Lawler guy. He also was one of the ones that executed the search warrant. And I did some research on some different things that they went through in the investigative portion. I will make a separate video on that because I think that's important. And I know a lot of you are kind of naysayers about how this went down and why didn't they look on Patrick's computer and all this other stuff. And I think that there was a very thorough investigation. I've come on here a number of times to say they're bumbling idiots because I do have a preconceived notion of the Massachusetts State Police, but Patrick was questioned. They took his clothes. They took photos of him to make sure that there were no defensive wounds on him in case he did hurt her or the kids. They double checked all of these things and they verified his alibi forensically. They drove the path. They went and got the CCTV. They did all that same night. Within hours, they had vetted his entire alibi. And we're able to say, draw a map and go at this point, at this point, at this point, use all their cell phone data, GPS data. They were able to use everything to pinpoint exactly where he was. So please, this is not a page where we're going to talk about Patrick controversies. There's plenty of other people who are willing to do it because everybody's on here grifting for a buck. So people are on here talking about that. You're welcome to go to those pages. Waiting for me to talk about that here, it's just not going to happen. Okay, so Dan Lawler, he is outside the room. Now, again, I'm not entirely sure that a woman who is paralyzed, she's at sometimes handcuffed to the bed, like soft restraints to the bed. She is hooked to all kinds of tubes that are, keeping her body functions and stuff. There really isn't any way that she can escape per se, but they still have to have 2 officers stationed outside of her door at all times. And they're under strict orders not to let anybody in. Reddington had to get a court order in order to allow a therapist to come in and talk to her. And this is where the controversy starts. So the prosecution would like you to believe it went down this way. Lindsay wakes up. She asks for an attorney because she knows she murdered her children. And she survived the suicide attempt, but they're saying it really wasn't a real suicide attempt. This is a fake suicide attempt just to get sympathy. Anyway, she wakes up, she asks for an attorney, she knows what she did, she is now frightened, she knows she's going to be punished, she knows she's going to be charged with murder, she's got to do something to make it seem like she didn't do it. So they allow a therapist to come talk to her. Their contention is that the therapist convinced her that she was hearing voices. Like the therapist is like, here's how you get out of this. You tell everybody you were hearing voices. And if you were hearing voices, they'll think you're mentally sick, and then you won't get blamed. You can claim that you were insane. They think that the therapist fed this to her. Now, the beautiful thing is this therapist is on the witness list. He's on the defense's witness list, so I'm excited to see his testimony. And then since she really hadn't been allowed to talk to Patrick or her family and no one was allowed to get in to see her, he loaned her his own cell phone. Call Patrick on my cell phone. Talk to him. Tell him what you know. Tell him what you remember. Tell him all this. So she calls Patrick and she has these conversations. According to the prosecution, one of the police officers may have speculated, may have heard the therapist feeding her this information. So they thought they could walk into court and get a cop up on the stand who would be like, I heard it with my own 2 ears. He told her to call Patrick and say that he was hearing voices. But when this Dan Lawler gets up there, he's like, that was the thought that maybe the therapist might have fed her that, but admits on the stand he didn't hear it. That has not been proven. That is not anything that's been vetted out. They realized that that was just somebody spreading rumors, and the prosecution took that rumor and thought they could actually make it fly as evidence in this fucking case. Because that's how bad these prosecutors are. And I shouldn't say bad. That's how desperate these prosecutors are. This woman has a 4-month track record of being sick and seeking help until the point where she had a psychotic break and she killed her kids. They can't explain that. This is a trial about the medical profession not getting her the help she needed. This is an on TV, live everyday indictment of our healthcare system. And they need to try and come up with motive. Who gave her the idea? Why would she do it? She hated her kids, and they're having a fuck of a time. Like, these prosecutors can't strike a single hit every single day because they're struggling to prove she was sane when she killed her kids.